Welcome to the Business Buyer Diaries. My name is Nathan Platter. I'm a full-time employee, and I bought a business. I did everything right, from finding the deal, handling all the due diligence on 63 opportunities, and ultimately bought a profitable gym. And boy, was I in for a big surprise as a new owner. I chronicled everything in real time, including the biggest wins to the stressful nights at 2 a.m. I'm sharing my journey without sugarcoating anything, so you don't make the same mistakes that I did. Here's today's episode.
Real estate it's actually a business, believe it or not. And so what we want to do in this group as a whole is, as we're moving forward, how do we invest in real estate but see it as a business? It's supposed to be hard like business, ownership. You got to know your numbers. You got to know your P&L. If you don't know what a P&L is, learn what a P&L is, because that's the way you're going to be successful. You got to understand tax strategies, because that's what good business owners understand when they partner with people who do. So that's why it's great to bring Nathan in this. So how do we apply even business ownership, acquisition thoughts to how do we run our real estate investment business better? Or if you guys want to buy businesses, and the guy's going to give you a blueprint on how to do it or how not to do it, depending on how you approach it. But Scott, Alyssa, it's great to have you guys here. And I'll let Nathan take it away.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Scott. Thanks, Drew. Alyssa, thanks for having me. And everyone, thanks for letting me come on in. For those who don't know me, my name is Nathan. So in a former life, actually, about 6-7 years ago, I was a licensed agent with Realty Group. I was a wholesaler with one of the groups here in the Twin Cities. And I struggled actually with making it a profitable endeavor. And so I pivoted back to being a full-time employee, 3M, Polaris, Sleep Number, and currently work with a tech company. And I built up a chunk of cash, did a lot of crazy jobs, and basically I had about $50K, and I didn't know where to go or how to run with. And so I ended up going the business acquisition route, learned a lot of great stuff, a lot of sucky, painful stuff that's still digging myself out of. And tonight's going to be really quick and a high-level overview. So they gave me about 15 minutes to go from finding deals, vetting deals, life as an owner, and that's going to fly by really quickly. So the bulk of the night is honestly going to be Q&A. Everything is out here in public. So if you know purchase price, net worth, it's all on the table. If it's too personal, I won't tell you, but feel free to fire away as we go. This is being recorded audibly, so if you want to hear it later on, totally up for releasing that to everyone here. I also have slides that'll be available as well after the fact. So feel free to take notes, however you like to learn, reading, listening, viewing at home afterwards, whatever floats your boat. So with that, let's rock and roll. First and foremost, yes, I am a huge fan of photography. So in the top right corner on slides that I think are the most valuable, pull out your phone, take a picture. It'll last a lot longer than just hearing a guy like me talk it through. So with that, let's rock and roll. But first, why would I buy a business? Real estate is the time-tested option. You can either go residential, commercial, Airbnb arbitrage, if you watch the YouTube ads like I should not be. And there's a ton of ways to do it. And so my big thing was actually life transformation. My wife works full-time, or rather worked full-time at a hospital until about 3 weeks ago. And I know, finally, she's not working at home. I've got 3 little ones. And so I wanted to make sure my wife had the choice to stay at home with our kids. So real estate is phenomenal with book value and net worth growth. That doesn't cover the grocery bill next week that is up 20% from inflation. So I was huge for cash flow. That was my benchmark for success. So with a wad of cash of about $45,000, $50,000, I said, all right, well, let's go buy an apartment building. I know how to syndicate. I don't know how to syndicate. But let's dive in and buy a commercial apartment building. Realize very quickly cap rates are really depressingly low. Like that 6 to 9% rate at best, a couple hundred, couple thousand a month. That's not really going to be what I was looking for. I said, all right, let's go smaller. Let's go residential. I know real estate. I've been a licensed agent. I can find some off-market deals, on-market deals. Same kind of conundrum though. Cap rates are not that juicy. I was seeing stuff 8 to 12 range. You can get creative with like Airbnb and like timeshare stuff. And the biggest barriers that I saw was the down payment. 50 grand isn't going to get you what it used to a few years ago. And I really wanted something that was going to cash flow so that my wife could stay at home. She worked at a hospital. She basically made as much as a nurse, so like 75, 80 gross. So that was the number I needed to hit for my personal goals. So I was looking around. To be honest, I don't know where I got the idea of buying a business, but this is a shocker. If you go stock picking on, Google, their price to earnings like 50 to 1 or something. If you go for more of that blue chip target style stock, price to earnings is like 15 or so. Small and medium-sized businesses trade about a 3x multiple of earnings. So let's break that down. If a business makes $300,000 in profit per year, it'll sell ballpark for about 900 grand. So to replace my wife's income of 75K a year, that comes in at about a 230, 250 purchase price. Now things get real interesting on the loan side. I didn't get into the loan side, but buying an apartment building for $1 million or a small business for 250, I can stomach that a lot quicker. And I know marketing and sales and promotions. I can juice that to be something more valuable through my sweat equity than I can through an apartment building and contractor stuff. So decision made. Great, let's buy a business. Now where do we go? Well, that's where the deal hunting begins. There's a few ways to go about it. First and foremost, there are a lot of different ways you can start. The first is going to be just through public sites. In the small and medium business space, there's not really a Zillow or a Redfin or a Trulia. It's really disparate. No one has that core businesses for sale platform right now. Surprisingly, that is the state of the state right now. However, if you were to go and look at alternative options, this is good for networking. I don't recommend it to find the deal you're going to buy. I recommend networking and connecting with individuals. These are just some brokers that I've talked to in the Twin Cities. There's a lot of independent agents. There's no like the broker house of brokers in the Twin Cities. But these are shops where folks that usually have owned a business are more veteran, more gray hair in the business ownership side of things. They usually do this as like a second career on the tail end of their careers. Great for networking, great for connecting. How I recommend, and please take a picture of this one because this can get very granular. Whenever a franchisor or a corporate company wants to do business in your state, they are legally obligated to submit what's called a franchise disclosure document. That's an FDD. It's regulated, I believe, by the Small Business Administration or Department of Commerce. Long story short, that means McDonald's, Valvoline, every single calendar year must file a 200 to 400 page long document and submit it to every state that they have locations in. And if they don't do that, they're not allowed to open their doors. So McDonald's does this on their HR and their admin side. The juiciest part about the FDD is, well, there's 23 sections. We're not going to go into those tonight. That's too much of a groaner. But they tell you what the average, the high, and the low revenue numbers are, all the contact information for the franchisees, and who the people on the boards of the companies are. So literally, the franchise that I bought into, I can read the profiles of their top 5 executives, and that's public information. You can take that however you want to, wherever you want to go, but it gets real interesting because you now have a Yellow Pages listing of every owner that you can now go prospect to. Some of them are LLCs, some of them are people's names, but you now have a list where you can reach out and now say, hey, I'm interested in buying a business. And for me, I wanted to get into a gym. I can tell you more about that if we get into the Q&A. I went for a fitness gym, like a Farrell's Extreme, an F45, Orange Theory, Snap, Anytime. That was the cluster that I was looking for. So I went to the Department of Commerce. I looked up those FDDs, and I started cold calling, started contacting folks to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Here's where I want to go. Help me figure out what the heck I'm buying into, because they have been in your shoes. They will tell you, hey, corporate sucks. The marketing does do this. Here's where you find customers, whatever. So this is where I recommend, if you're looking to buy a business and you have a brand or some of their competitors in mind, go this route. This is how you find off-market deals. Last item, and then we'll keep moving because this slide is getting old in front of us. An average homeowner, they sell what? 10 years, 12 years, kind of roughly? Yeah, it's that number. Small businesses sell every 5 to 7. So that means 20% of all business owners are entertaining selling right now on the franchise space. And if you were to ask me right now, Nathan, would you sell? I would consider it for the right offer. And I've owned my gym for 6 months. So everyone is thinking about it. Everyone has an exit plan in mind. So don't be afraid that you're annoying them. You're both a learner as well as someone who can be their successor. So let's pretend you did all this. You now have a business that you want to buy. Fantastic. Well, what do we do now? This is where we get into due diligence. I want you to remember this guy here on the right side. His name is Elliot Holland. I don't expect you to know him. In the guru space, learning about buying a business, he's a CPA. specialized in the mergers and acquisitions space. Based on his stats, 2 years ago, 50% of deals had fraud and the deal was not worth pursuing. Recently, he's upped his number to about 60, maybe even 70% of all deals. And those are the deals that make it to due diligence. I didn't buy a deal until I vetted my 63rd opportunity. So this is not like Amazon or Target and you're just going to buy anything. It is a surprise when you buy and close on a deal. That is the norm. So let's say you have a business, you and the seller say, hey, let's do something. Phenomenal. There are 4 steps to the loan business acquisition process. There's 4 of them. NDA stands for non-disclosure agreement. Letter of intent, also called the LOI. Then there's the due diligence phase. That one is going to be the most detailed. And finally, the PA, the purchase agreement. So we'll go through all of those right now. The NDA is just like when you meet with a real estate agent. Hey, I'm a licensed agent. I'm been licensed by Minnesota. Please sign this document. It's how we can start our relationship. It's very normal. You're not obligated. You don't put anything in. This is just so that you can get the business name, the website, and they can tell you stuff so that you don't go blab it out to the world or on Google and you're not allowed to just be a loudmouth. Once you sign that NDA, you now get some basic profit and loss statements. You can ask for as much as you want, but the typical are a couple of years of bank statements, tax returns. It's middle level detail, not everything, but most of it. In this point, this is where you, on your own or with an attorney or a real estate or a business broker, you put together your handshake offer, your letter of intent. This is where you say, hey, here's what my purchase price is. Seller, this is when you're going to get paid out, because there's different nuances to that. Here's how much the seller may do on financing. Here's how much your down payment's going to be. This is where you turn that handshake into like a penciled out deal. So nothing is locked in, but this is where you start coming to terms with both sides. A lot of areas is very common to have seller financing, so they don't get their 100% cash out, go home, but they stay on for a little while longer so that the business is in good hands once you sign the paperwork. I'm going to pause for some water. Any questions? Because I've been blabbering at you for 15 minutes. Any immediate questions? We'll have a ton for Q&A, but anything just way too fast or way too high level so far?
Your 63 deals that you analyzed, is that pre-LOI or was that you submitting an LOI and then working?
About 5 were LOI. I had 3 criteria for myself. One was that it had to be fully staffed, so I could be an absentee owner. The other is it's profitable. It's not losing money every month. And the third one, it had to be at a reasonable multiple. And surprisingly, that took 63 deals to get to. About 4 or 5 of them fit those 3 criteria, but I could find red flags pretty quickly in the accounting or in some of their claims.
How much did you have to spend on just all the lead up before getting your,
Let's see. So to get to the NDA, that's just sweat equity. So maybe I spent probably about an hour passively looking. I was not an active full-time search. Right now in the small business acquisition space, about 70% of buyers, I have some notes here, about 70% of buyers, this is their full-time job. For the folks that are doing this part-time, sub 40 hours a week, it's going to take about a year. It's pretty normal, and that's for a generalist search. If you haven't... Oh, sure.
I've heard hiring, quality learning.
Yep.
You have to go through that with multiple of these different things that you vetted, or
if you want to. Quality of earnings are expensive. That is a big bottleneck in the small business space. Right now, if you get a home inspection for just like buying a house, what's the number? $800? For Elliot specifically, for his deals under $2 million, which is like a poor person deal, the cheapest package he does is $20,000. And that's regardless of if you close. He says 2 out of 3 deals are fraudulent and not worth doing 20, 40, 60 grand out of pocket before you own anything. So that's a big issue. Yeah, what else? Payroll, missings, not accounting for owner's sweat equity, vendor subtraction where you don't fully do it, split invoices from different vendors, you don't properly document your payroll, like 1099 versus W-2. You attribute franchisor fees as actual marketing expenses. And your cost per acquisition is inflated, are the most common ones.
So is that real fraud?
Depends on who you ask. At the end of the day, yeah. And some folks, it's intentional. For some, I mean, we'll get into how a deal could be fraudulent for the seller's sake. A lot of times, it very well just could be it's Joe the plumber selling his business. And Joe just has napkin receipts, and he just doesn't know. Granted, it's not a Bible business, but that is a possibility. So fraud or mistake depends on who you ask and how you view it. Yeah, exactly. All right, excellent. I have some stats here as well. We can definitely get more into it, just some quick ones, but we'll keep proceeding from there. Excellent. One item in the due diligence that is kind of intriguing, actually. You get some documents, but there are 3 individuals outside of the deal that can kill the deal, regardless of buyer and seller. For me, I own a gym, brick and mortar. The landlord had to approve me taking over the lease. That was an interesting one. The landlord at first wasn't on board, but we had to do some conversations for the deal to close. Additionally, the franchisor had to approve. I'm buying into an existing brand. It's been up and running. If the franchisor does not agree, the deal's dead, regardless. I get my money back, but that's the state of the deal. So we had a broker and the seller that vetted me personally. They had to foresee that there are 3 other individuals that got to give the thumbs up on the buyer. And that's in every deal when these are factors. Finding the bank approval, seller, the bank loan, just like buying a house, shouldn't be a surprise. That's going to be a factor to make sure the deal can get funded at the end of it. I am. Yep, both for the commercial lease and for, I guess, everything, actually. I did an SBA 7, so everything has a personal guarantee for both myself and my wife. Only my name was going onto the signatures, but franchisor and bank required that my spouse was also a personal guarantor on that. That's pretty common. With SBA, that's in every deal. That's why some folks don't like SBA 7, but it's also the most easily doable loan type for these kinds of transactions. All right, now for the purchase agreement. This is going to be basically getting all of the handshake agreements, all the texts, emails. I'll do this, you do that, we'll fund this. We had a weird thing. The franchisor charges a fee, and so we were back and forth on who's covering a certain fee scenario. This is where everything that's handshake on paper gets put into one document. It's like 5 pages long. This is where everything gets cemented and solidified. So that's the final step. There's no negotiations. If you have an addendum to the PA, then you basically go back a few steps and you have to rewrite a lot of stuff. So people don't like to do that. Let's pretend you get this far. Hey, you just bought a business. You're free. Now what? What did you really get yourself into? And that's where we will get to the next step of things. So me personally, this is what a day in my life looks like. This may be different from one business to the next, but this is currently what I'm at. Those are not pictures of our gym, by the way. Those are just off Google, so don't put too much stock into that. I'm working on the business about 5 to 10 hours a week. I was expecting about 3 hours or so a little bit more than anticipation. But it mainly consists of I have a check-in with my team once a week just to make sure the next 7 days we know what the heck we're doing. We also I spend time on hiring, training, and recruiting. I haven't had to hire anyone yet. I was very proactive with my staff. I have 1 major key employee, 3 sub-key employees, and like 17 shift fill-ins. It's a group fitness spot, so they're a person on the mic leading the classes. But I wanted to make sure I had 0 loss after a transition. That's a big risk for the buyer, and that's a fear that everyone has, and it's worth accounting for. I'm working on different ways to monetize the business so that it inherently is more valuable, increasing the cash flow. And right now I'm working to get it into stable profitability. Right now it's pretty volatile. Earnings are far short of every way that I had estimated. And for better or worse, that's going to be something I have to personally cover if it comes to that spot. This is my final slide, so we can park here and we can ask any question under the sun. I do have some resources for you. Just like I have a microphone on right now, I recorded this whole process about 6 months before we got to the closing table. Through luck, fate, however you want to call it, I started recording these about a week before I found the deal that I ended up buying. So I documented every step of the way, here's what we did today, here's the text, here's whatever we did, and I took about 98 episodes to get to the closing table. So if today is too short and you want 10 hours of video vlog or diary vlogs or whatever, check out the podcast. It's free. Go for that. I'm also in a business network as well. So CPAs, attorneys, landlords, all throughout the United States that have off-market deal flow cycling between each other. I think it's like $100 a month. It's pretty cheap. It's a price of a membership. So check that one out as well. And then finally, the last thing that I will plug is a due diligence course. After everything that I've gone through, there's been a lot of green, yellow, and red flags. And I've partnered with an attorney to help put together a program of what I should have known and done differently, because she advised on deals where about 85% of them die before they get to the closing table. She charges $450 an hour. I paid $3,000 in attorney fees just to get things confirmed. And the course, I think, is $1,000 right now. So, I mean, if it saves you 2 hours of attorney's fees, it's a hands down no-brainer. So that's what the QR code is for. The thumbnail art is for the podcast. But this is where I'd highly recommend if you want to know more beyond tonight's spiel. It's very high level because there's nuances all around, along the way. But that's all I've got. So we can roll from there.
Who does the paperwork?
Ooh, we had a broker. So the broker did all of the assembly of the paperwork and all of the DocuSign side of things as well.
Is that normal, or can you bring in a lawyer? Or...
Lawyer is a good backup. Since the deal was already represented by a broker, they already had their own documents. He's with Transworld. He's one of those 3 brokers here in the Twin Cities. Very systematized, very structured. Attorneys can draft them. A generalist attorney is about $350 an hour. If you're working with a specific industry or a niche, they're going to be about $500 an hour. So they'll still have templates, but it'll cost you a couple grand just in docs across the whole process.
Who pays the broker fees? Buyer, seller, both?
And in most cases, it's the seller. So the deal sold at $505. I think the selling rate was 10%, I want to say. Our deal is tiny. At the end of the day, most brokers will work with deals that are 5 to 30 million. And so anything sub-million is almost not worth their time unless it leads to other things. The location that I bought led to about 6 more listings for the broker. So I think that's why he ended up taking it. Otherwise, I don't see why a broker would. Anything under $1 million most of the time.
We talk about how you narrowed in on the gym niche and like what other areas you thought about going into.
Yeah. So the idea of owning a gym actually didn't hit my mind until probably 2016 or 17. I don't know why, but I was actually just combing through Craigslist. I just wanted to see what the most expensive stuff for sale was because I was just curious. And they had a section of businesses for sale. So, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. There was Snap, Anytime, and food trucks for sale, of all things. And in my career, actually, I'm in data and analytics. At one point in my career, I was actually the guy that put together the monthly reports for all the franchisees for Anytime Fitness Global. So they were getting the listing of their monthly memberships, their upsells, their losses, and a few other data points along the way. But that was one oddity that I had that I wanted to take advantage of. So when I was looking, I was actually looking at Anytime Fitness locations. That was my target brand, if I could have one, because I worked at corporate. And so whenever I was talking to brokers or other places, I would say, hey, I don't need to end up with a certain brand like a Snap or an Anytime, but I've done this for corporate, so I know the numbers. I can quickly review a deal in 10 minutes, and I'm not going to waste your time. And I can afford something that's going to be in your price range. That's what I went for. I would recommend folks have a skill set that you can lean on. So I was meeting with Jade Rowe this past week, actually, because he wants to learn about this. For real estate agents or other brokers, I recommend something related to construction or property management on some level. For better or worse, brokers are going to work with roll-up or bolt-on acquisitions. So if you own, like what's an example? Like roofing and lawn care are pretty common. If you can buy someone's book of business, you can buy another book of business. It's not complicated. If you're a real estate agent, you can now do like a sanding company or some sort of lawn care. It's related enough that it's a smooth transition so that corporate and the bank and the seller and the buyer and everyone involved is going to give the thumbs up on it. So have something that's semi-related, or you can tell a story on why it's related. If you've been an agent and you want to go buy an auto repair shop, it's going to be a taller order. It's going to be hard to prove to the bank why this is a safe loan on it. only 75% of the bank loan is backed by the government. It's a lot smaller. So that's why the equity injection is higher, because there's less backup for the bank if the deal were to go south.
What's the gym?
Farrell's Extreme Body Shaping in Eden Prairie. And they're independently owned and operated, headquarters in Des Moines, Iowa. At one point, I had the St. Paul location under contract, but Eden Prairie was not going smooth enough that I wanted to expand. So I actually had a first right of refusal for St. Paul and ended up passing because it was going to be more to coordinate than I was willing to sign up for. So someone else ended up getting it, and they closed about a month ago.
The one by Jerry's food.
That's us. Come on in. I'll get you free gloves.
Why franchises? Were you set on franchises? That was it?
I was fine between franchise and independent. That's the alternative option. The independent fitness locations that I was finding was usually owned and operated by the same person. So usually the owner was a personal trainer or went to the U of M for like biology, kinesiology. I have a background in tech. I don't know nutrition or biology. I don't know that side of it. And so a few deals that I vetted, I looked on there. There was one over in St. Louis Park. The guy was selling it. On his LinkedIn, he put a job posting that he needed a new head of personal training. And so I knew right away, if a personal trainer can't train at his own studio, it's going to be a problem. So just for my buyer search process, I figured going through a franchise route, they probably have more systems, probably better brand awareness. A royalty fee is about 6 to 8%, pretty normal. And I'm fine paying that fee. I'm okay with that. For my first deal, I may go independent someday. I may do a different industry altogether, but I'm fine paying that learner's fee to see behind the curtain on what an 80 location business has done.
How do they help you? Do they help you with marketing and a lot of things, or is it just kind of start off?
It's mainly logos and branding and vendor connections. In hindsight, all the vendors we work with, you can find on Google pretty quickly and easily. Probably the biggest value that Farrell's has brought to me is the branding and the awareness. And so that's something that I can't replicate. If I were to open Nathan's whatever, I can get the vendors, I can get the instant connections, but I wanted to take over something that was sustained, that I could find staff for, and that was profitable. So I didn't really want to take the risk of going independent. And like the key founder taking a bunch of clients with them wasn't also a risk factor.
Did you look for off-market deals at all?
Yeah, I would. When you would call the franchisees, I would say like, hey, I don't know if you want to sell or not. I just don't know if I want to buy into the business. Where was it? I would do just a lot of contacts. And so after talking to about 20, what was it? It was probably 20 Anytime people and maybe a dozen Snap Fitness people. You start to hear similar numbers. Where was it? I apologize. You start to hear similar numbers in different sizes. Like what's a typical membership size for a gym? What's the cost per new member, which is $300? That's pretty normal. What is the cost of an agency if you were to hire someone to do the marketing for you? What are some of the hiccups in social media accounts? How do you vet different staff? So I want to just talk to anyone under the sun who would give me 18 minutes on the phone. And so if they were selling, cool. If they were just wanting to talk shop, that's fine. The deal before this one I was checking out was in La Grande, Oregon, actually. And so at the end of the day, I was looking for a deal, not for a location. Just happened to be 15 minutes from my house. So depends what you're looking for, local or absent, whatever works. Yeah.
So coming from like a brick and mortar real estate guy,
Yeah.
how do you feel about paying a lease?
I'm fine with it personally. The guy that bought St. Paul, that's an independent building. I think St. Paul had it assessed at like 800 or 900 grand. So what I liked about that deal actually is the guy that bought the franchise, he's the sole tenant. He has 100% of the square footage. He got an SBA loan for the business. He can probably get an SBA, it's called a 504. It's basically if you buy like a lot of heavy equipment or a building. He can now go back to his bank and get a second loan to buy the commercial building, because the guy that owns that building owns like 5 small commercial buildings in the Twin Cities. And so if you wanted that net worth protection side, it's actually not a bad play for him if you own your own building. I'm at a big strip mall, like a Jerry's. We have like a nail salon, a soup shop. It's probably like a couple $1 million building. I'm fine with it. I think our rent is $8,800 a month. So that's a lot to stomach. But at the end of the day, it's 25, 40, 20% of our total revenue. So you just have to know what the right ratios are. And if the ratios and the net profit really make sense. I'm fine with it. I don't mind paying rent.
You know, that is per square foot per year.
Oh gosh. 45, I think we're like 4,500 square feet. I'll have to pull out a calculator. Our rent is 8,800 a month. Who has a calculator here? That's the number I pay out of the bank account. So I'm not quite sure how it's broken out. They sent me the itemization of what CAM, interest, and one more. At the end of the day, I look at what goes in and what goes out. There's different accounting styles. There's cash and there's accrual. I just look at the cash side personally, but that's a whole nother rabbit trail. Wasn't someone here like an accountant? I can't remember. Okay, yeah. So he's the guy to talk to if you want to hear about the different sides then.
How much so it's 505 at the purchase price?
Yep.
And did you put 10% down? Or?
Yeah, so 505 is purchase. I had 45 for the equity injection. I think my all-in was like 8.5%. The seller is carrying, what would that be, 11%? So we're technically short of the 20% that the bank required. But there is a note on that. So for the seller, he has a $59,000 note. So starting this up, let's see. So for my side of things, I just pay a monthly payment to the bank. That's good for 10 years. So I pay Huntington Bank a check of whatever, I can't remember the amount right now. But I send Huntington a payment every month, and that's good for 10 years. That's the longest loan term you can get. Because remember, they turn every 5 to 7 years. So they don't want to go beyond a 10-year term. I do that for 10 years. And then with the seller, the way that Huntington had the deal sketched up that made it to closing is about a year after we sign the paperwork, I start paying the seller, what is it, a 5-year note, but it balloons at year 5. Who else has done like weird notes like that? I basically pay a monthly payment. It's a 10-year AM, but there's a balloon after 5 years. So I pay him like, yeah, okay, I'm seeing some nods. I got the right terms, yeah. So it's like $720 a month that I'll start paying in December. It's about a year afterwards. I have it written down here. In like 70% of all deals, there's at least 10% seller financing. That's pretty norm. If there's not seller financing, that's very atypical. Not good or bad. It's just sellers expect to have 10% of their cash stuck in the deal, and then they get their full payout a few years afterward.
Did your seller stick around?
Yeah, he followed through. There were two. Well, let's see. There were two sellers in the deal. One is a CPA. The other is a personal trainer, group fitness style guy. My main guy that I interacted with the most was the personal trainer, and because he was operational. So he's been very engaged, very active. And whenever I've had questions or gotten stuck on different things that are new to like a business owner, he's been engaged and very active. He's moved on. He's kind of burnt out from the fitness space, so he's in his second phase of life side of things. The CPA guy is still involved in a couple other locations. And so he's still active in the brand, but he's very absentee, he has a few other deals that he's doing. So they've been engaged. Only about 52% of all buyer-seller interactions end on a positive note, which is surprising, actually. I don't know why that's the case. If you guys want it afterward, there was a search investment group study that I saw about a week ago. But they went through deal sizes and how the deal panned out, and buyers and sellers usually don't end on happy notes for whatever reason. I don't know why. But that's part of why you want to interact with each other. Our deal almost set a Huntington record from LOI to closing in 29 days. Normal is about 60 to 75 if you're at a good pace. If you're doing like $1 million to $5 million deal, it's probably 4 or 6 months. And we were texting each other back and forth like 5 times a day, email responses within minutes. So like we were trailblazing at 29 days. So once you have something under contract, don't anticipate closing anytime soon.
What are the key rules of thumb that you're looking for when you're doing your search?
Yeah.
You know, like in real estate, back in the day, it was a 1% rule.
Yeah.
And then the second part is, once you're past that first window, how do you cut through the BS? Like in real estate, you're like, oh,
yeah,
no, I know those rents are way too high. Or,
yeah.
I know it's not separated either. Like, how do you compare those things to the business search?
Yeah. So I would, nowadays I ask for actual bank statements, and I don't use bank statements to tell me what the costs are. I use that to get a list of vendors. Because sometimes depending on the seller and how they've run their business, they'll split how payments are made. So say like payroll is run by their Wells Fargo bank, while the rent is paid by their U.S. bank account. Say, hey, give me your bank statements, and only give you your U.S. bank. They gave you what you asked for, but now you need to start reconciling. So you can't just do one account to one account. You need bank statements so you can look at accounts or expenses to look at the tax returns. The tax returns have to circle back to make sure all the vendors are accounted for so that you have the multiple things. In my situation, I don't believe all of the bank accounts were actually brought forth. The accountant that I had detected 6 red flags that he considered fraudulent. And so those are areas that there's now some follow-up that we're doing on our own ethics side of things. So that's a whole nother rabbit trail. Nothing has been concluded, so there's won't go into too much details, but I use bank statements to get a list of vendors. There are a few other sellers within the franchise that I'm in, Farrell's, and they're interested in selling. They're profitable, but their cash statements were lower each and every month. And when reconciling it, what else is going on? They were putting in auto payments, mobile, meals. They were paying their nanny and their daycare from that side of things. A few other deals that I looked at, they had like 2 gym trucks, but they were paid for and stored on the owner's. The owner had a house that had like a ranch next to it, so they were not paying themselves rent for these business vehicles. So it's small business. It's not like a formal accounting process, and so folks will just do nuanced things. At the end of the day, bank statements to verify above anything else, and asking vendors what they're charging. Sellers have an incentive to tell you they're paying $100 to, I don't even know what a good example would be, $100 a month to some technology. If you ask the technology company, hey, how much are you charging the studio? They'll say, well, we're charging them $700 a month. Say, well, okay, well, what's the truth then? The vendor has no incentive to lie. The seller has one. So that's why quality of earnings can get really expensive really quickly, because they do so much investigation to make sure you're not missing out on all that's going on. Because
the ability, when you catch those lies,
yeah,
in the agreement to go after the seller?
Well, you would just renegotiate. So in that case, you would find out in the due diligence side of things. And so you'd say, hey, I found some stuff. This isn't adding up. I am editing my offer before we get to the purchase agreement. Yeah. So like right now, I bought it. If I were to bring up an issue with, hey, I found red flags, it's considered buyer's remorse. Yeah. And you're just out of luck on that side. So there's not really a whole lot you can do. And so that's why vetting things out are pretty important. And for better or worse, that's why it's so stinking expensive, because you're paying people a professional service price to do this, call, email, and confirm a lot of things.
So are those issues where the disappointment in numbers came in, or like where you're not making as much, or were there other things that contributed to that?
Yeah, so the issues I had in my deal, there's 6 of them. We'll see if I can do on top of mine. The CPA was not billing himself accordingly for the cash flow and the accounting books he was keeping. The other owner was not paying himself a salary. I thought it was in the books, but in hindsight, he was actually recategorizing himself in a different section. Some of the staff were not included in payroll. So the technical term is wage theft for that side of things. They're counted as contractors, even though they were told certain things that make them an employee. Certain vendors were excluded from certain vendors were excluded from the books. And then there were 1 or 2. There was
excluding certain bills.
Yeah. And then the other one that's interesting, so my instructors, they're told, your class is at 6 a.m. So show up at 6 a.m. You have to teach a 6 a.m. class. Last I checked for like worker classification, when you dictate to someone's schedule, they ought to be a W-2. I have about 19 instructors. 19 instructors were categorized as 1099. So when I was looking at all of the documents, there was no line for instructors, only my general manager who clocked in. And so that's an additional $5,000 a month in instructors that I need to teach classes that never showed up on the books. And so that was another oddity. One thing I should have noticed as well, they never use a payroll provider. not a Paychex or a Gusto. What are those other ones? The seller was writing checks out of one of his bank accounts to pay people when they asked to get paid. So that should have been something I caught. But you also can't ask. I was a member at the gym for 3 months so that I could test everything out. You don't want to be the gym member that says, hey, who pays your payroll? Like, that's a weird question. So part of it is just stuff you can't know unless someone tells you to look for that kind of thing or trains you on that. And so that was another area. The other one, too, was they said their marketing, they were paying $3,000 a month in marketing expenses. So in the gym world, $300 is the cost to get a new member. That's just a number I've known. So I thought, okay, that's 10 new members a month. In reality, the franchisor was charging a marketing fee, which across everything, that's normal. The owner was categorizing that as a business expense, but really the franchisor takes the money out before it lands in the seller's account. So the seller was saying they were paying $3,000 a month when they never paid $3,000 a month. They were making up a pseudo expense, was essentially what was going on. And so now I'm paying a lot to try to counteract that. And one stipulation I should have done, I didn't put this in the slides, I should have done it. I also, in future deals, I require I don't know if I'd put it in the LOI or the due diligence, probably the LOI side of things. Seller must maintain historic marketing costs based on that month of the prior year within a margin of error. What that means is I found the deal in June. We closed in October. In hindsight, the seller stopped all marketing once we said hello to each other. So the 4 months leading up, the marketing dollars was zero. We lost about 15% of our members because there was no one coming in. So when I bought it, I was expecting revenue to be like 40 or so, and it was like 35. And so I literally asked, like, hey, what gives? You've done so much marketing per month. And he looked me dead in the eye and said, why would I pay marketing for your revenue? So legally, yes, he is not obligated to. Ethically, that's wrong in my book. And so in hindsight, when people are buying a business, I tell people, like, look at the last month or the same month of last year and require in writing, seller must maintain marketing expenses, must maintain salaries. You can't undercut salaries. One of my staff was told, like, hey, you'll get a pay raise, come back for, I won't say her salary, but we'll just make up a number for 50 grand or whatever. I'll give you a raise in 3 months. When I bought the business, she said, hey, I'm having to work like 2 jobs to pay my mortgage. Because she was promised this, and now the seller is out and he's gone. And so now I'm left holding the bag of, well, do I want my staff member to work at Culver's and the gym, or do I want to pony up? So I gave her a pay raise, and that wasn't something that I was expecting. So all that to say, I put into writing that expenses have to be realistic before the deal, and they have to be maintained throughout due diligence so that there's no surprises after the fact. I know this is all like hypothetical. I wish I had visuals and spreadsheets to show, but I also don't want to gloss over some of this stuff because this is very important. It's an expensive lesson to learn.
Would you redo the deal, or would you buy this deal again?
I'd buy it at a $300,000 discount.
Wow.
It's a great studio, phenomenal staff. The members are incredible. Some weird stuff about our studio that I didn't realize were so valuable. One of our members is a godmother to another member, and they met at our gym. Like, that's how tight-knit they are. Under my ownership, someone's house literally burnt down, and within 3 days, we raised $5,000 for her housing to get her clothes back. Another person had a traumatic accident, and we basically did a fundraiser, and now, like, she's able to do, like, recovery and stuff. So our studio is really weird because we have a really great customer base and a great membership base, and I didn't realize how valuable that was. So yes, absolutely would buy the deal, not the price point under the setup that we had. And so that's what I would do on it personally. And I'm curious to see how that other studio goes because this seller had a couple studios. I bought the first one as they unwind their portfolio. So I'm watching from a distance how their other studios end up doing, if it was similar or just mine was just odd.
How was balancing W2 life with small business life? Is that doable or is it a struggle?
Fortunately, it's doable. Most of my coworkers are in California, so I work at a tech company. We compete with Tubi with Amazon and Netflix. And so very different industry. My coworkers, I mean, California, people don't wake up until 10 o'clock in the morning. And so it's 12 o'clock our time. So I have a couple hours in the morning to get some stuff done. For me, it's been doable. But again, I'm putting in 10 hours a week. I have 3 kids that are under 5 years old. It's a lot. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. It's like working 2 jobs. And at the end of the day, it's worth it because it's something that I'm prioritizing. If you're looking to own a business and the owner, you can find out that the owner is actively engaged, you're going to burn yourself out very quickly. The prior owners have, the first guy that opened the studio, he worked there from 5 to 8 a.m. He then worked his day job here in the Twin Cities, and then he worked the 4 to 6 p.m. shift. And a lot of business owners, I don't know the divorce rate, but it's got to be pretty darn high. And so it's not for the risk averse. Oh, no joke. That's awesome. Was that Krista's? Or was that Cindy's? Or? Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
The whole family, like the daughter and the husband.
Yeah.
They all teach.
Yeah.
It's very close knit. So people have been there a couple of years. They all quick.
Yeah.
And they have parties like every 3 months.
We still do ours. Yeah, absolutely.
But most people like join for a couple of days, and quit.
Yeah. For the gym space, it's very much an attrition base. Exactly.
But is it hard for you not to be that kind of owner where you like your whole family's teaching?
It's worked out for my situation. Because my manager is very heavily involved. She left a very well-paying job at the U of M to make fitness her career, and she has taken a pay cut to do that. Yeah, she's incredible. Part of the struggle, at least in the gym space, a lot of those areas are very sales and marketing dependent. In the gym world, a typical tenure for like our memberships are $170 a month. We're not cheap. A typical timeline is a person stays for about 18 months. That's just rule of thumb. Some stay for, like Los Campeones, they'll stay for 10 years. Some people quit after a month. Our attrition, our loss rate is about 3%. So members stay for about 3 years. So if folks can stay longer or come in at a higher price point, there's different levers you can do. And that's our strategy. When someone comes in, keep them as long as possible.
You hope a lot of teachers were actually members and they would like do like once or twice a week.
Yeah.
And they were just like on call.
Yeah. And
so like you can't make that.
it's tough. And it was almost callous, but at the beginning I was just not physically present. I knew if I was on site, the former owner was used to being there 20 hours a week. So I knew if I started off being there 10, 15, 20 hours a week, that's the expectation that Nathan's going to be on site. Nathan can handhold. Nathan can handle this. Nathan can troubleshoot that. I had a few members, I don't know how, find my cell phone number and ask me if they can get a discount on their membership. Like just a random text out of nowhere. And so you have to be almost a stickler when you start. Whatever the business, roofing, lawn care, gyms, whatever. It's that broke real estate agent business owner relationship. People are used to texting you at 9 o'clock on a Sunday, or you're only available during certain business hours. You almost have to be rude so people to know what your personal boundaries are. And nowadays it's pretty normal. My managers learned how to handle that solo. And when she went on vacation, she saw that I handle those boundaries. So now she on vacation does not get texted at all either. And so you have to almost set the culture and the tone and be above average on some things so that it becomes average in other people. So for Farrell's, yeah, it's very much you overwork yourself, and I knew I could not sign up for that.
So your wife was your why.
Yeah.
Did the gym allow her to leave her job, or are you guys just
A leap of faith. Out of the 6 months of ownership, we have lost money 5 of the 6 months. And for her, we realized our kids are going into school-age years. We have a countdown timer until they're in school. And for better or worse, we're going to take the leap of faith. And so that's where we're at right now. And she's loving being a stay-at-home mom.
Nice.
Who do you need to be to flip that?
Oh, gosh. I honestly don't think I could sell this for above 200. So the equity, I probably won't be upside on equity until 6 years from now. So was that 2030? So for better or worse, I'm locked in for a while. I'm in negative equity territory right now. And I personally would not feel good about selling it at the price I bought it, knowing what I know now. So I'm viewing this as a way to learn and a way to start getting that on my business ownership side of things. Right now, I'm getting messages from brokers on all sorts of places because once you have that first deal done, you're now a repeat buyer possibility. So I view that as the upside and doing stuff like this to help folks figure it out. And please buy my course. That'll help cover some of the losses for next month. So yeah, I think the gym is worth 200 based on the financials and some of the upside remaining.
Raise your hand if you own real estate right now. Raise your hand if you own a business. All right, cool. Nice. Business owners.
Good. It's not for the faint of heart. It's well worth it.
I have a question a little bit.
Yeah.
I have a friend, wholesaler, and he's kind of running out of flips to find. So
Sure.
he's looking for businesses.
Yeah.
In one place he went to small town mom and pop retiring stores. They don't know what they're doing. They don't even accept credit cards for some reason.
Sure.
Like, so have you been I know you don't want those, but did you find any like value add situations where you can come in and prove it and sell it maybe?
I was actually looking for those fixer-upper businesses at first. Because a lot of times, yeah, a typical small business owner is usually an operator. For folks that have read the book, The E-Myth, it's a common one. It's kind of like Rich Dad, Poor Dad for business ownership. The gist of it is, say you like to work on cars. You know how to fix up cars. The person gets the idea of, hey, I should own a car repair business. Well, now they own a car repair business, and a business is marketing, hiring, accounting, and it's not repairing cars. And so for mom and pop shops that are very small like that, that's a common trap people get into. They like their craft, baking, auto repair, painting, and now as a business owner, they're not doing what they love. They're now managing people. And so that's a common thing. Some folks will go in and do it. I personally have time constraints, and so that's something that I realized I didn't have the bandwidth for that I at first thought I did.
Well, you look at 63 deals and found situations that, you know, like some of us could like look for. So like small town retiring people.
Sure.
Don't know what they're doing anymore. They're not in the craft anymore. Not going to own the computer.
Yeah.
You can find those people and just say,
Yeah.
you can prove it being the lead.
Absolutely. It can be. That's usually the hardest part. Lenders look at tax returns and bank statements, and usually if you have like the yellow, white, pink paper slips, it's not going to pass underwriting. So that's usually one of the hiccups on that side of things. A tricky part with we'll just go with Meesville. Isn't that the drive-through city by Red Wing? Like there's like 10 houses there. So you're to buy something in Meesville. If you're to buy it, the owners, their first thought, surprisingly, are who are my customers and my employees? And so if they know that you don't know their customers or their employees and like they're a heartfelt owner, they're not going to sell to you because they don't like you or they don't know you. So that'd be your first barrier to do as an acquisitions person. Will they like me enough to want to do this deal? Because you're going to be calling them once a day for 3 months. So like you're going to get to know these people scarily well. And so there's absolutely value. There is an upside to doing it. There is a career to do that. It's going to be like sitting down with homeowners and giving them wholesale prices. It's establishing trust, having a good relationship so that both sides want to do business with each other. I personally haven't. My prospecting route's never found that. I mean, it's possible though. Good question. I'm not sure.
What do your 10 hours look like? Is it emailing, phone calls?
So 1 hour every Monday is managing our team, reviewing what happened the prior week, what we're doing this next week. 1 hour on Friday is meeting with my general manager. She's basically like the operator of the whole studio, making sure HR things are taken care of, status of equipment, commercial issues with our landlord, if there are any. Our franchisor is in Iowa, so I'm in contact with their client success person, if you will. Right now, internally in the company, we just merged with another brand out on the East Coast. So we're having to do a tech migration. We're having to do a brand roll up. We're having to do some like administrative stuff. And so it's stuff that I never thought you'd be doing, but we're doing a tech migration right now and making sure that those are all handled and taken care of. I still need to transfer utilities over from the seller to, there's some weird stuff with our internet. It's just weird that I have to get on the line with like Comcast for. So it's just back end stuff that someone has to handle. But something that I'm glad I did, as weird as it is, my staff has the company credit card, our LLC, and our bank account info. So it's a big leap of faith, but my staff could steal 20 grand from me and I would find out 2 days after the fact. That's my management style. That is a risk I'm willing to take, I think. But some owners want to be more hands-on.
That's a franchise. How much are you allowed to pivot versus how much do they have to guardrail?
Good question. There's been some friction with that. One example is a pull-up bar, actually. So with Farrell's, we do kickboxing, punching a bag, kicking in, whatever. A lot of franchisees wanted to add like some Los Campeones style workout equipment. It's like free weights, the big bar. Some places want to do like a squat rack, like we have like cement barriers and like do squats against the wall. And Farrell's came in and said, you can't do that actually. From what I recall, in contracts, the FDD the franchisor agreement that you have with corporate, they're pretty strict. It says if we don't open our doors for 2 days, they can take the keys and kick me out as a franchisee if I don't tell them about it. That's what's on paper. At the end of the day, I'm paying them $3,000 to $5,000 a month in revenue, and they spend 30 minutes a month on me. So it's not worth their while. But the documents are heavily favored towards the franchisor. So franchisees, like right now, I sell a nutrition brand that hasn't been approved by corporate. Corporate has a white label, but I sell First Form protein and creatine with a few munchies that are another brand. And since it's more revenue, corporate's letting me do it. Corporate could come in and clear my shelves tomorrow, and they're legally allowed to do that. So it's give and take. Different franchisors have different strong arm styles. Our franchisor is pretty lenient on some things. They're strict on others. And that stuff you don't know unless you talk to other franchisees that have had good and bad experience with that brand. Yeah?
Still use your product?
Absolutely. I took my greens this morning. It tastes like seaweed. I try to get my workouts in when I can, but my kids are up at 2, 3, and 4 in the morning. So I'm usually more of an afternoon workout person myself. But great classes. At the end of the day, we have a solid community and a phenomenal Facebook group. People come to us for painting and home construction referrals, and 5 people will say, here's my husband, here's my friend, like here's how we do it. So that's our style. Other locations may have a different one. Other brands may have different styles of how they run their operations.
You're talking about maybe buying a business like in Oregon versus you got one close.
Yeah.
How do you see that would have been different compared to your management style today?
Yeah. So that one in Oregon wasn't Anytime Fitness. That one was in a freestanding building. That one I would have had 2 general managers and a couple part-time managers. With Farrell's, the brand is very much a higher price point, and so we're already selling a premium product. With Anytime, Snap, Orange Theory, they're competing against the low cost. And so those brands are having to sell premium surfaces because they can't go down. So it may be different, but I was going to do Zoom walkthroughs, fly out every other month. It was basically in like a St. Cloud, Minnesota style city. So you'd fly in, rent a car, and drive 2 hours to the middle of nowhere was what I was factoring in. And for better or worse, I was open to that because I was getting tired of waiting around for 2 years to find a deal. But very much a Zoom, phone, and a remote style thing. I've been working remote for 5 years as an employee, so I've seen how it's worked well and poorly. And so I was gonna roll with it. I was gonna figure it out on that side, but they needed too much money that I knew it wouldn't go through underwriting. So that's why it fell apart.
Okay. What do you wish you would have done differently? Looking back a year or two.
I would have looked at the number of owners that had the results I was looking for. My strategy was to be a 3 to 5 location owner. And right now, only one owner owns 3 or more studios. So there's about 55 locations. Most are 1 location. Some own 2, but there's only one person that owns 3 or more. And so I would have checked out the lay of the land a little bit better. I wish I would have talked to more franchisees. I talked to 2. I should have talked to at least 5. I should have gotten actual literal bank statements and seen payroll and not tax returns. And I should have compared that to what market rate was. I was comparing the payroll incorrectly to realize that they were getting underpaid on that side. What else? One other item is I would have made sure their expenses were locked in, and I should have backed out of the deal as we got closer to the due diligence phase. So one final area that really burned me, I didn't know this, but in the gym world, at least in that industry, right before a sale happens, a lot of owners do this, apparently, they will do what's called a PIF sale, paid in full. Kind of like for car insurance, you can pay per month or pay 12 months, get 2 months free kind of thing. About a month before the deal closed, the seller did a fire sale on memberships and said, hey, you can pay $180 a month, or you can pay $1,800 and you get a 12-month membership. And about 25 members took him up on it. And based on the accounting system that we had, cash versus accrual, what should have happened? He was doing cash.
Yeah, so he collected it all, and it was his revenue, whereas like it should have been spread out over 12 months.
Bingo.
So why do you think sellers and buyers don't usually get along?
And that was a classic example.
How much do you have into everything right before the PA then?
Yeah.
And was that too much of a sunk cost for you to operate that factory?
I had probably, attorney, I was probably $5,000 in. One area that's a little different between small business and real estate. In real estate, you have your down payment. And so you have your inspection, your appraisal, whatever. Those are costs outside of your down payment. In small business world, it's called equity injection. I thought it was the same as down payment, but when you put costs into getting the deal, that goes into your down payment. So my down payment was going to be like 45. I paid probably $5,000 in professional fees. On the day of closing, the bank would only need me to pay 40 because I already put 5,000 into the cost of getting into the business. So I could have done a quality of earnings and that would still go towards my equity injection. So it's similar down payment equity injection, but I would have been out $5,000. What I should have done, I should have asked for a different accounting structure to unwind the books and to reset it. I don't know, a couple $1,000. It's not cheap. It's not like you hit the button and then it flips the sum if column or whatever, but quality of earnings would have been different. I should have told the seller, I am not proceeding to the purchase closing table unless you fix your accounting structure to be more, help me with the wording, to be more industry standard so that I receive some of that revenue. Is that how you would? Well, yeah, probably more accurate at the end of the day. So for better or worse, I'm servicing 25 members and I don't get their revenue until they re-up in August. And so it pretty or something, yeah. And at the end of the day, and I didn't know that in the gym world. So when I talk to other owners and say hey, how'd it go? I'll literally tell them, yeah, they did a PIF sale. And they say, oh yeah, me too. And that's normal in the gym world. And so it's expected when I sell my studio. For a new guy, he's not expecting me to do it. If I buy it from another owner, he'll be expecting me to do a PIF sale, paid in full, and basically do a cash run. And now he has to pick up some of the pieces. For gyms, that's why they sell at a cheaper ratio, because there's some sleazy stuff that goes into it. And unfortunately, that's just stuff you don't know unless you talk to enough franchisees that do an acquisition. If you launch your own studio on a brand new Farrell's in, say, Lakeville, that's not going to happen to you, but you also don't get revenue day one. You put a lot up front to open the front doors. So I would have talked to at least a dozen people in the same system. When I say system, franchise brand. And if there's not enough, like Nautical Bowls, they've gone They're a franchise that I'm kind of curious about. They've gone from like 1 to 50. They have 120 locations set to open next year. Yeah, like, I mean, incredible product. Like Brent Amundsen's a pretty sweet guy. So with some brands, you can't really do the same research. But if the company's been around for 5-10 years, I would go through their entire FTD, Exhibit E, and just talk. You can't do enough people research on that side of things.
And then, like, are they willing to share that? Like, they do as competition? Are they like an open book? Like, where's the line?
Corporate will be pretty open with it. At the end of the day, the people will tell you that what do the youngins call it? The ones that spill the tea, I think, is that the term? I'm 35. Whatever, the juice, whatever. We'll go with that. Talk to folks that own that or that are potential competitors. There isn't any time literally a mile from our house. The guy that owns it, his name is Kyle Wheeler. And like, we're peers. Like, we don't fight, we don't negotiate. And we're like, hey, my people are too cheap. You want them? Like, yeah, send them my way. And like, hey, they want group fitness. I don't have it. Send them up the street. Like, yeah, cool, thanks. And so like, it's not rivalry oriented. We're different enough. Now with Orange Theory, F45, we'll be friends, but we're not going to give each other like one-up tricks. We'll just be cordial enough. Like, hey, you noticing some weird Facebook algorithm? Yeah, me too. So people are pretty open at the end of the day. Yeah.
The anytimes, they're a lot less employee management, right?
Yeah.
So you went into a business that had a lot more.
Yeah.
Management, right?
Yeah. And Anytime's an interesting brand right now. 2 weeks ago, no, about a month and a half ago, they merged, or Self-Esteem Brands, parent of Anytime, they just either bought out or merged with Orange Theory in the US. So technically, Self-Esteem Brands owns Title IX, Basecamp, Orange Theory, and I think 1 or 2 other brands. So those will be an interesting to see play it out. In the Anytime Fitness brand specifically, they're going through a rebranding right now. So the classic Anytime Running Man, that's actually getting updated to be AF. And those membership prices are going to tick up. And every club is required to do a renovation that costs about $80,000 to $150,000. So all that to say, for folks that don't know the industry or that brand in particular, a lot of folks that are having to refresh their franchise agreement, because those are 10 years. That's pretty normal, a 10-year franchise agreement. If they're in like year 8, 9, or 10, they have to either re-sign or take the logo off the door. So a lot of veteran owners that bought 8 years ago, before Alex Hormozy and a bunch of these other fitness things came out, build it, they will come. Those folks, it was a cash machine. They're now selling it for about $50,000 to $100,000. And first-time buyers into the brand I don't believe they're obligated to know about the construction update. But in the franchise document, it'll have a branding section that talks about the branding requirements. And if they don't talk to enough franchisees to figure it out, they're going to be stuck with a construction bill that they will be legally obligated to fulfill. So that's a lot of words to say you're buying a fixer-upper and you think it's good to go. Is within that brand specifically. And that's why there's going to be a handful for sale, and there's going to be a handful to come. Because an Anytime makes $40,000 to $50,000 a year profit, roughly. So it's a year and a half, 2 years of profit just to pay a construction bill.
Were you nervous about doing more of a niche than like a general market like Anytime, where they just have the equipment and everything?
I was okay with it personally. In my head, I saw in the gym, fitness, health space, I see 2 tiers. And this is my personal opinion on the space. I see it as either low ticket, low price, or high ticket premium value. The group fitness studios that charge $90 to $180 a month, those folks are going to end up going to big box locations like a Lifetime, an Equinox, or a YMCA. That's my opinion. Because right now, if a mom and a dad want to come to my studio, we're more expensive than Lifetime. And Lifetime has TVs and smoothies and daycare. People go to Lifetime for the daycare. And I don't have daycare. I really am not going to get into daycare. And so I can't compete with the high price, high value. So I have to compete with more of that personal results oriented thing. So I was okay with it. With Planet Fitness going on right now, Planet Fitness is doing the low cost provider. So Snap and Anytime, their rates used to be $20. If you ask them nowadays, they're about $50 to $60. Planet Fitness, their premium with equipment, machines, free group training, and tanning beds are like $35 a month. So I'd rather get a tanning bed and a workout for $35 than pay $60 for an anytime. Yeah,
For years.
that's their model. Yeah, and
Yes, the Farrell's, that was 6 days a week. I had a
Yep.
second kid and I had to quit.
yeah.
I mean, 6 days.
Yeah, it's intense. One thing that I'm personally a huge fan of, bragging on my brand. If you go to Google and you type in before and after Farrell's, you'll get stacks and stacks and stacks of before and afters. It's not uncommon for people to lose 20 pounds in 3 months. If you do before and after Anytime Fitness, before and after Lifetime, you see the weirdest. I'm not even going to put screenshots. You see weird stuff. But with Farrell's, I was okay because we're Googleable, and in the Twin Cities, there's an aura of like results. We're a Midwestern brand. We're not a coastal brand like a Gold's or some other brands.
I like you could show up to any hour with Orange Theory.
Yep.
You've got your workout time at 4.
Oh, and you
You
must.
need to change to 5, and you can't. You can change from last week.
Yeah, it's pretty stringent. And so that's something that we want to do. We want to meet you with where you're at. My manager knows every person's name and their family structure every time they walk through the door. The second time I walked into Farrell's, they knew my name, remembered my wife's name. My wife still hasn't been to the studio, and we've owned the place 6 months. And they still know my wife's name and our 3 kids. And I don't know how you train for that. I lucked out on staff. And that's a huge key.
How reliant are you on that one person?
Heavily. It's a kryptonite for me. If she got hit by a bus, I would be in trouble. The seller told me to always have an Indeed posting or something for jobs in the area. I'm taking the risk of not doing that because I'd rather have the time now. And I could put a posting out there and get resumes trickling in slowly over time. That's what other owners do. And I'm okay with that risk of being reliant on one key person. I have 2 people that I could promote to more full-time hours. But yeah, if she got hit by a bus, I'm in trouble.
Do you feel like you have to fight the urge to be more hands-on? Do you feel like you'd be more comfortable if you were there more, and that's like a constant battle, or you pretty?
I don't know what I would do if I went there, to be honest. The main thing I could do is alleviate hours, and my staff make 20, 25, 30 an hour. I make a good amount more than that. And so to save $20 an hour to get interrupted from a job that pays me more than that, I don't see the value gain personally. When we have our parties, something what we do after every 3 months, we do a party for our people. We go to a bowling alley. I put down $1,400 worth of food and party and photo booths and stuff. It's something that we like to do. It's our community thing. I speak for 5 minutes and my head GM speaks for 20. Like, people don't know who I am. And some people think that's a bad ownership style. Some people think that's strategic. That's just the way I decided to run it. And I like to go in, I like to be present, but don't need to be the superstar. So I'm cool with it.
Awesome. Thank you, Nathan.
Absolutely. This has been another episode of the Business Buyer Diaries. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I hope you're realizing that business ownership is no cakewalk. Check the podcast notes for a link to the DIY due diligence program, the complete list of show sponsors, and for media inquiries. Music written and composed by Wes Schrock. I'm your host, Nathan Platter. Join me again on the next one.